And welcome back. The Greenburger Center for Social and Criminal Justice is leading a transformative effort to reshape our approach to individuals with serious mental illnesses within the criminal justice system. Joining me today is the executive director of the Greenburger Center, Cheryl Roberts. And Cheryl, glad to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And when we talk about, the issue of mental illness, particularly when it comes to the criminal justice system, a lot can be said. From your perspective right now, how do you see things?
I think they're improving, but that's not probably saying much. The fact is, about half the people that are incarcerated have some kind of mental illness. Among women, that's even higher. And for the better part of 50, 60 years, we have been taking people out of mental health psychiatric facilities and moving them, unfortunately, into homelessness or incarceration. And so we have a long way to go, but we're hoping that some of the things the Greenburger Center is doing, and also the announcement made by Governor Hochul yesterday to put more money into supportive housing and things like opening or reopening hospital beds for those who are severely ill, will help.
How prevalent is this problem?
Within the criminal justice system, it's very prevalent. As I mentioned, about half the people who are incarcerated have a mental illness, and about 20% or so you have a serious mental illness. And prisons and jails are the worst place you could be if you have a mental illness. They require that you follow rules, that you behave a certain way. And sometimes with a mental illness that's certainly untreated, that makes it very difficult. And so this population tends to break rules, not intentionally, but because they can't help it, and they stay longer, they cost more money, and they don't come out any better. So it's a real concern within the criminal justice population.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about the Hope House? Because I think our viewers would definitely find this very enlightening.
Sure. Hope House is a real project of love for Francis Greenburger. His oldest son, a little bit more than a decade ago, was involved with the criminal justice system, and also has some significant mental disorders, mental illness. And at that time, there was no place for him to be diverted, even though the judge and the DA at the time were also looking for an alternative to incarceration. Because of the nature of his charges, no one felt comfortable in diverting him. So his son went to jail at Rikers, about 2 years there, and then to an upstate prison, and was never diverted. We, though, began the Hope House Project and the Greenburger Center to try and provide that kind of alternative to incarceration residential facility that judges and DAs and most importantly, people with the lived condition would have a place to be diverted to and hopefully get better rather than worse in jail and prison.
And when we talk about really diversion, I'm really stunned by a number. And well, let me talk about this number first of all that I found out. Comptroller Brad Lander reported like 1 in 5 people coming out of Rikers Island has a serious mental illness, and that was a recent analysis. That is quite alarming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it corresponds to the numbers that I quoted earlier. It really is astounding that our answer to mental health care apparently for the last 50 years is incarceration, homelessness, or the morgue. If you have serious mental illness, especially if you're a person of color, people of color are more impacted by the justice system, and if you have mental illness, that makes it worse. Look at Daniel Prude as an example of someone in a mental health crisis, a person of color who was tragically shot during a crisis.
Yeah. So walk me back a little bit to the Hope House. I want to connect all this here together. When you have a voluntary program, that's a great opportunity for people to just, pretty much jump in. But the word voluntary and seeing people volunteer to say, hey, I'll do this. What's it like? And what's that response like?
Well, first I have to tell you that we've just recently broken ground, so it's going to take about 18 months to build this facility, and it took us 10 years to get to this point, which is another story in itself. So I can't tell you exactly, in terms of a person's actual experience yet, but the way it's supposed to work is that first of all, the defendant, the person who's involved, has to be willing to go to Hope House as opposed to going to prison. And with this population, really their only option is prison. So if they are competent to understand what's happening, they want to go for treatment, that's the first step. Then the DA also has to agree, and the judge. And if those three parties all agree that this person is willing, is able to go to Hope House, which is a residential treatment facility where they really don't come and go often. They can go with a peer at first, and eventually that's the hope, but they stay on site. They get their treatment there for up to 2 years. So it's a longer term residential stay. There is monitoring that's involved. They have to voluntarily agree to, for example, wear a monitoring bracelet um, and to abide by all the rules. And there will be security people on staff at all times. Those are some of the extra seatbelts, if you will. Those are some of the extra security measures that were not available to Francis's son. And one of the biggest reasons why the DA and judge didn't agree to a diversion. So we're trying to make this a therapeutic environment where people are in community, they are not incarcerated, they can get their services right on site, they can learn skills like making lunch and making meals, maintaining a residence, and job skills, and become stable, and then be stepped down into the community. So it's very simple. It's amazing that it's taken so long to get online, and we're not there yet, but that's the essence of Hope House, to provide a secure, safe environment where people can go voluntarily to get treatment rather than punishment, and then safely step into the community and hopefully not come back. I mean, that's our goal. We don't want people to come back into the system.
Cheryl, you're being generous here, because I know when we talk about the time that it's taken to really get this onboarded and offline, it's been quite, been quite considerable. A lot of hurdles, I think, getting everybody to be in agreement.
But the people that were in agreement from the beginning and who saw the value of this immediately were the people of the Bronx. I mean, we searched all over the city for a location, and very frankly, I didn't want to go to the Bronx because I felt like the Bronx had enough of these kinds of facilities, and I felt like, we shouldn't always put all of the same kinds of uses in the same neighborhoods. So we looked different places, and we found a place in the Bronx. And the first thing we did before we did anything was to go to the community board and say, look, we have bought this property. It used to be a former men's shelter, homeless shelter. We are interested in doing this Hope House project, but we're not going to do it if you don't want us here. We're not going to continue this project unless we have your partnership in this. And we spent 8 months with the community board and going over their concerns. And in the end, they said yes on 2 conditions. One was, we don't want people accused of sex offenses, because at the time it was next door to an after-school day program. And I said, I understand that. And the second is that they wanted 4 beds reserved for people from the Bronx, because the Bronx has typically the highest incarceration rate. Sometimes Brooklyn, the 2 boroughs go back and forth. And I said, absolutely. If we can, reserve a bed, if there are 2 people, one from Bronx, one from somewhere else, and we're only taking from the 5 boroughs, by the way, we'll give, for up to at least 4 beds, we'll give the preference to the people who are coming from the Bronx. So I just have to say that, because I think the people of the Bronx have been amazing in their ability to welcome us, and their willingness, I should say, to welcome us, and understand right from the start that this impacted them, and they were willing to open up, as well as all, the elected officials, Congressman Richie Torres when he was a council member, Vanessa Gibson when she was in the council and now as borough president, Melissa Mark Viverito. So many people have, from the Bronx, have supported this project. Where we didn't get the support, frankly, was really at the state level. It took them a long time, and I have to say, Governor Kathy Hochul's administration really pushed this project forward, and so I think we owe a lot also to her.
Yeah. So you mentioned about preferences for a minute. I want to get an opportunity also to say that I know that veterans also have the opportunity for preferences. Share a little bit about that.
Right. We wanted to give not only the Bronx folks preference, but also veterans, because so many times people who serve come back with some serious mental illness and PTSD, which can sometimes lead to criminal justice involvement. So we felt that was also important.
Yeah, we know that so many cases across the nation where we see perfect case and example of people who have mental illness, but not really being able to have that dealt with at this level. Having diversion in local areas, what's that mean for both community and then also for the life of the offender?
98% of people who are incarcerated come back out. Very few people stay in forever, and appropriately so, because other countries have very far shorter terms of sentence than we do, and their communities are safe. But having said that, 98% of people come out, and so you want them to be in the best shape possible to re-enter the community. And we know that people with mental illness who enter the carceral system don't always come out any better, and sometimes far worse. And so to have the ability to be diverted, to get treatment, to get job skills and life skills, and then to be stepped down in the community with our partners, like Osborne and Cases and Fortune and so many of the other nonprofits that do good work in the Bronx and throughout the city. I think that's going to benefit not only the incarcerated person and returning citizen at that point, but also the communities in which they will reintegrate.
Talk a little about treatment options as we look around. There are so many, but the treatment options that are being offered right now, what are they?
At Hope House, they will. It's a combination. It's supposed to be what they call a milieu therapy model, also based on the Fountain House model. Fountain House is a treatment model that really came out of the deinstitutionalization movement in the 60s. There's a Fountain House clubhouse in Manhattan, and they work on something called the work order day. So part of therapy is not you go and sit in the room for 50 minutes and you tell the therapist, your deepest, darkest, which is definitely appropriate and needed. But in addition to that piece, a work order day therapeutic milieu model means that when you get up in the morning, you're going to help make breakfast. Same with lunch, same with cleaning. And it's all done in relation to other people. So in connecting with people in the kitchen while you make your dinner, there's a therapist there, or a counselor there who's helping you navigate issues that may come up, interpersonal issues or issues with your mental health or mental illness that, you need help working through so that you are successful when you leave. So it's not only the traditional kinds of therapy and, of course, medication management and an opportunity to meet with a psychiatrist, but it's that more kind of minute-to-minute, day-to-day opportunity for you to engage with your fellow residents, and also the counselors on staff who will be there 24 hours a day to help manage situations as they come up.
Got to talk about the hard part. If a person decides not to complete the program, what happens there?
Right. If a person decides not to complete, or frankly, if they become violent or threaten violence, because we can't have violence even threatened in this facility, it has to be a safe environment, they will then be taken back to court, and the judge will decide at that point what to do. We don't really have a decision in necessarily next steps, although we definitely do have the ability to say, we're no longer willing to take this person if they would, for example, hurt someone. We want to give as many chances as we can, but there are some times when we will have to say also, we can no longer serve this person. And then it's up to the judge to decide, should there be a different program or should they then, go to prison?
Yeah. How do you feel the impact of this program will be played out in the lives of so many?
Of course, we hope that it will be beneficial to them and their communities and their families, and give them a second chance. And give them, unfortunately, oftentimes what I hear uh, is that people don't get the mental health care they need until they're arrested. So, given that situation, we hope that they will benefit by getting finally quality treatment that they will then continue throughout their life as needed.
And when we talk about reentry into the community, obviously that's huge, right? That's a goal. And to have reentry into the community, um, give me some of the barriers that you anticipate seeing with reentry, because some reentry just is not smooth, and there are some that are.
Right, right. You know, I could be wishful thinking, but I hope that part, and I think that part will go a bit smoother for us than maybe in other areas or facilities, because right from the beginning we went to the large providers of reentry services now. So I mentioned some of them before: Fortune, Osborne, Casis, Harbor House, um, and we asked them, what they needed, how we could expand the continuum of care, because the folks that will be treating, they can't treat right now. So all of the heads of these organizations either have been or are still on our board of advisors. And we plan from day one to start thinking about reentry and to be in communication with our partners in what's called the New York City ATI, Alternative to Incarceration Coalition. We're a coalition of, I believe, 11 groups that all work together. And so I'm hoping that we avoid some of the, um, pitfalls that maybe have occurred in the past, because we began right from the beginning asking those reentry providers, how do we fit in? How do we all work together? And the last thing I'll say is that, Francis Greenburger, of course, the founder of the Greenburger Center, and we didn't just start the Greenburger Center. First of all, he went through in his family several years looking at and watching and being involved with his son. But Francis and I also spent 6 months, maybe even more, touring New York City, New York, and the country, looking at different facilities, talking to people, asking questions. Um, and so I think that the way we entered the space, the way we've been trying to reach out to our partners, and our commitment to successful reentry will help avoid some of the issues that you are alluding to.
Yeah, and when we talk about a couple of things. Number one, landing right, I should say, after going through this process, hoping the diversion can actually be profitable in the lives of people. We know what those chances are. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. For yourself, how do you approach it on a day-to-day basis, knowing that some days it literally can be just like rolling dice?
Clearly, obviously, we're not open yet, so I don't know how it is exactly going to go. But I think we'll take it day by day, as say, and we are going to have a very rich staff, on site, probably more than most other facilities have, because of the nature of the population we're taking. And I will never forget one of my board of advisors who ran for 30 years mental health reentry and diversion facilities, said that if you have someone that suddenly decompensates, that suddenly, becomes violent, it most likely means that the staff, that something hasn't been observed, that you've missed something, because he felt that if you are engaged meaningfully with the residents, you from day to day, you will understand and you will see problems, brewing and coming up. So my hope is that, yes, good days, bad days, but you know, tragic days, days where things really spin out of control, that I don't believe those days will happen at Hope House. Ups and downs, sure, but the big, change, the big issues that people might be concerned about, I just don't think that, with all the staff we have and the training and the emphasis we've placed on very engaged programming, I think we will avoid, um, those kinds of emergency situations.
Yeah. I want to also have the opportunity to talk about security and through bail bonds supervision. How does that work?
So that's a great question. I'll tell you, I was a licensed bond agent and used to bail people out for a nonprofit upstate, a nonprofit bail fund. So um, uh, bond agents can be used for good. They're not all, what you may see on TV. Um, we are going to require that the defendant ask for bail. Even under the bail reform laws, there's a provision in the law that allows the defendant to ask for a dollar bail or a nominal amount of bail. This is done oftentimes when someone knows they're going to be pleading guilty to something and they will be getting incarceration as part of their sentence. They might want to ask the judge to set bail so that they are, even if it's a dollar, they're sitting in a local jail. They're kind of what they call clocking their time. So when they are sentenced to whatever, 3 months, if they've been in jail before the sentence is imposed, they will get time served. So the significance of that is when you ask the judge to set bail with Hope House, we're going to be having a bond agent basically pay that bail, and then the bond agent can actually, if the person for whom the bail was posted doesn't agree to the terms of the bail, the bond agent can actually take that person, physically take them back to court. Now that may seem like a bad thing, but the alternative is if the person is released from a facility and is out there on their own and is decompensating, is not safe, then the police will be called, and then chances are things could get a lot worse and maybe deadly. So our bond agents will be trained. They will understand their role. They will understand mental health, how to de-escalate, and they will our expectation and requirements will be they will take folks back that need to go back, who say, I hate it here, I want to go back, or I've become violent, or for whatever reason they want to go back, or leave without permission or with a peer. Then the bond agent, rather than the police, can take that person back. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, does make sense there. And so, for people who want more information, what do they do about getting connected?
So at this point, we have a website, thegreenburgercenter.org or greenburgercenter.org, and they can go on that site and click at the top the page for Hope House, and they can learn more about that. There's also contact information on our website, and they should feel free, to reach out, and we'll get back to them.
Yeah. Excited?
Yeah, excited and impatient, I think. I want to get it open.
Long time coming, right? So as you get closer and closer, I can tell. You just want to get those doors open and let's get it started.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, it's been great talking to you, Cheryl. Cheryl Roberts, who's the executive director for the Greenburger Center for Social and Criminal Justice. Talk about diversion and Hope House 2025. Looking forward to hopefully what will be a great asset to our community. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for being with us.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
All righty. We are taking a quick break, but guess what? We're going to come back with more right after this.